Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi, Nedarim Daf Mem Vav. Perhaps let's back up to the beginning of the Mishnah, the beginning of the Perek HaShutfin. We have two partners in a joint property. They made a neder against each other. HaShutfin shenadru hano'oz amizeh. Reuven and Shimon committed by way of neder to refrain from having any benefit from each other's properties. Asurin likones lachatzer. So since each one has committed not to benefit at all from his friend or his possessions, what happens now? Can they walk into this joint property? They own a chatzar together. What about stepping foot into that chatzar? They may not enter that chatzar because ultimately you're going to be walking on your friend's partially owned property. You're having a no from him, and it's us. Rabbi Yehuda ben Yaakov Omer, no problem. Ze nichnas l'teich shaloi. Reuven, one of these two warring parties, when he steps a foot into this chatzar, he can say, look, it belongs to me as well. I am now sort of verifying that this chatzar is intended for my use at this point in time. After all, we purchased this together with the full understanding that we're going to be using it at will. When I choose to use it, it's meant for me. And I'm not taking from you at all. I own it. It's my possession. So therefore, Ze nichnas l'teich shaloi. Reuven could just walk through the chatzar pretending like he's just walking through his property. V'ze nichnas l'teich shaloi. Likewise, his friend could do the same, perhaps at the very same moment. Wherever I step is mine at the moment. Wherever he steps is meant for his use at that moment. In line with the concept of bireira, you can choose, you can verify. This is now meant for me, this was meant for you. And we're not interacting with each other, we're not benefiting from each other, rather, each one is enjoying his own piece of real estate. Ushnei masurim lahamid rechayim v'tanur ulegadol tarnegolim. This whole discussion up until now is regarding trespassing, regarding walking through the area. Drisas haregel. In that case, Rabbi Yehuda says, I'm walking through my property and you're walking through your portion. But what about a more serious, a permanent, sort of commercial use? Being ma'amid chaim, setting up your millstone there, your tanner, your oven, raising your chickens. That sort of overtakes the entire chatzar. And strictly speaking, when it comes to chosh and mishpat, when it comes to interpersonal, financial, halachas, you can go ahead. Halachas, you can go ahead and object. A partner can object to his shutaf setting up shop in the jointly owned chatzar. Walking, using, that's fine. It's more personal, but setting up your equipment, that takes on an entirely new dimension. So a shutav has the ability to object, to be makpid, to prevent his partner from doing this, and by ignoring his partner, by allowing him, he is in effect giving him something, benefiting him, and that's a problem. So when I just walk through the chatzar, I can say, this is my area at this moment. I'm not taking over your area, it's mine that I'm walking on. But when I set up shop, I'm sort of spilling over into your part as well, conceptually. In which case, if you allow me to do it, you're giving me permission, you're giving me hana, that's us. So that's case number one. These two partners have a two-way neder against each other. What do? Walking through the chatzar is a machlokes, setting up shop is us. Case number two. Haya echad mehem muder hana mechaber. In this case, only one of them, Reuven, has a neder not to have hana from Shimon. Here as well, leikonis lechatzar. Reuven may not enter the chatzar. although he owns a portion of the chutzner, because it's also because you don't know where he's walking. He's walking into a jointly owned property, and inevitably he's stepping on Shimon's property as well. That's Tanakama. We don't want to apply Bereira. You can't just make that verification right now and say, look, this is mine, that's yours. You can't do that. The Ran explains yesterday because it's Din Torah, and Din Torah doesn't allow for Bereira, as we learned yesterday. Rabbi Yehuda ben Yaakov, you could do it by way of applying the concept of Bereira. And the Ran explained, although typically we don't say Bereira by Dinei D'Oraisa, like Neder, but here you don't need much Bereira. This is not your classic, typical Bereira, because over here it was purchased together with this in mind. This arrangement, this financial arrangement, that each one can use it, at any given day, has already been established from day one. It's already been incorporated into the fabric of this purchase. It's just a question of scheduling, a question of timing. When am I going to use it? When are you going to use it? We'll have to figure that out. We'll have to, work that out. Those are the finer details yet to be ironed out. So very little is left unknown. That's not your typical Bereira, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda ben Yaakov says you can apply Bereira in this case. And therefore Rabbi Yehuda ben Yaakov Omer, in case 2 as well, where it's only a one-way neder, Yachalu Leimer Loi, Reuben could tell Shimon, there's no issue with me walking through the chutzner. I'm walking through my part, not yours. The portion which I'm standing on was meant for me, for today. I'm not entering your domain at all. Now, in reality, there isn't much of a chiddush in case 2 over case 1, as the Ran points out. The main chiddush is the next line, which we're mentioning for the first time. This fellow, the Neider, Reuben, who made the neder, that he may not enjoy Shimon's, nechasim, he's called a Neider. He's actually the Neider and the Mudar at the same time, because he made a neder restricting his own personal use. He has to go ahead and sell his chelik. He can't stay a partner. You know why? The Ran explains. Because what's happening? Reuven can't walk into Shimon's property, or can't, set up the Rechaim and the Tana, right? But Shimon has no issue doing it. Shimon never distanced himself from Reuven. So when Reuven sees that Shimon is using the property and he can't use Shimon's property, he's going to be jealous. And it's going to lead to him actually going and using the property. He's not going to be able to contain himself. And he's going to go ahead and use that property. To preempt that concern, we tell him, sell off your property. Meaning, get out of the deal, get out of the partnership. Here comes case number 3 in the Mishnah. Reuven and Shimon, the partners themselves, are not in a fight. It's an outsider who had an issue with one of these partners. You have an outsider. Mudar me'echad memano. He made a neder to keep away from one of these 2 partners. Now he decides he wants to walk into the chutzner. Can he do that? Lo yikanas l'chutzner, he cannot, because one of the owners is his is a fellow who's shouldn't be giving him ano. Rabbi Yehuda ben Yaakov Omer, no, the same idea. Bereira yochel leimar loi. This outsider, when he visits the chutzner, he can say, look, I understand that we're not allowed to interact, but I'm not walking into your chutzner. I'm walking into your friend's part. And the Ran brings the Rashba. This works only when he's coming to benefit the other party. So again, we have an outsider, let's call him Levi, who made a neder not to benefit from Reuven. But he's okay with Shimon, the other partner in the chutzner. According to Rabbi Yehuda ben Yaakov, you can activate Bereira here as well. Levi can walk in saying, look, I'm walking into Shimon's property, my good friend, and I'm coming to help him. I'm servicing his stove, or I need something from him. So he's representing Shimon, so to speak. He's using it as Shimon would use it, and just as when Shimon uses it, it's okay because of Bereira. Likewise, I'm not interfering with your property, Reuven. I'm going to Shimon's. That's okay. Continues the Mishnah. Hamudar no mechavere. A person made a neder not to have enough from his friend. V'yesh lemechatz beis habad muskorin be'ir. And his friend happens to have a bathhouse or an olive press facility which is rented out. It's leased to somebody else. Can I make use of that property? Is it considered still in my friend's hands, and I can't have enough for my friend, or is it considered as though it was given over to a third party, in which case I'm not interacting with the owner, just with the current, the current caretaker, which is mutter. So im yesh lo behen tfisas yad. So I'm Reuven. Shimon is the fellow who I can't have enough from, and Shimon gave the Beis Habad to Levi. So if Shimon still has a hold, he has some sort of personal, interest, some sort of control in that facility, also, that makes it still Shimon's. It's still identified with Shimon, and therefore I can't take any anah from there. But if Shimon relinquished all, personal interest, all personal rights to the facility, totally rented it out, he leased it out, and it totally doesn't relate to him anymore, mutar, in which case benefiting from that facility is not tantamount to benefiting from Shimon the owner, and therefore I can go ahead and use it. And they won't explain for us exactly what these terms mean. Finally, says the Mishnah, person tells his friend, it's usher to me by way of neder to enter your home. The purchase of your field is usher to me. That's very personal. It's owner based, and therefore mace if the owner passes away, or he sells it to a third party, mutter. I'm no longer limited and bound to my neder. The neder only lasts as long as he owns it, but not past his ownership. But if you relate it directly to the item, to the asset, to the property, irrespective of its owner, I'm not going to enter this home. Nothing to do with you. The home I don't like. Ron told us a couple of weeks ago it can be based on any concern, like a bad mazel or something, that he has something against the home. Or sadezu shani lokeach. I'm making a neder against purchasing this field. Nothing to do with you. It's not personal, sorry. It's the field itself that I don't want. In this case, it outlasts his ownership. Mace, if the owner passes away, or he gives it over to somebody else, Asr, I still cannot approach this property. Let's go back to the main theme of the Mishnah. Right, so let's go back to the first case. You have two people that are shutfin in a chatzir. They were nadru hanoz amizeh. None of them could enter the chatzir according to the Rabbanan. Now, we had explained it based on the Ran, based on the Gemara Bava Kama. What is the question? It revolves around whether or not we apply bir reira. So true, that's the Gemara Bava Kama, but the Gemara here is not yet sure. We're not yet certain about how to learn the Mishnah. Why would the Chachamim disallow both parties from using the chatzir? Here comes the question posed in the yeshiva. Perhaps it's because the Chachamim applied a knas. They penalized these partners. What are you doing these Nedarim against each other? Inevitably you're going to fall into issues because you're living together, or you have a joint property. You're not meant to make these Nedarim against each other. So perhaps it was knas based. It was a penalty that this allows the shutfin to use the chatzir. And that's strictly when he's at fault. So Reuven instigates the trouble. He makes the neder. I will not have enough from your chatzir. Then we say, okay, what are you doing these things? Knas. So if it's self-imposed, there's room for knas. But if the other party is the one that instigated, Shimon is the one who tells Reuven, you can't have my property. So it wasn't Reuven who self-imposed the Isser on Shimon's property. It was Shimon who told Reuven, stay out of my property. And likewise, Shimon to Reuven to Shimon. So it was externally imposed. There's no room for knas there. What did I do wrong? That's the question. Is the knas factor serving as the basis for the halacha in the Mishnah, in which case it would be limited to a self-imposed neder? Or is it more than that? Perhaps a berera question, in which case it's irrelevant who made the neder, whether it's self-imposed or not. If you look at the Lashon on the Mishnah, it begins with the words Hashutun shenadru anazar mizeh, which indicates that Reuven self-imposed a neder on himself. He says, I'm not going to have your chatzar. And likewise Shimon. Benadru pligi. In that case, we have the machlekes, meaning in that case, Rabbanan say, don't use the chatzar. Nobody asked you to make these. Nedarim, knas, keep away. But hidiru zeh zeh mai. What if it was externally imposed? Suddenly, Reuven hears from Shimon that that Reuven can no longer use Shimon's property, and likewise Shimon from Reuven. What would you say in that case? Mi amrinan benadru de pligi. Shall we say the iser to enter the chatzar is limited to a self-imposed neder? We penalize them for doing that. Avo bediru zeh zeh moidule Rabbanon l'Reb Eliezer ben Azariah. But if it was externally imposed, even the Rabbanon would agree we allow entry into the chatzar. We apply a breira, no issue here, because we have no need to make it knas. The chiyanus and dam, it's as though they were forced into this situation. The neder was externally imposed on either one of them, on both of them. So is the isser based on knas and limited to a self-imposed neder, a dilma, or perhaps it's unrelated to knas? It's a more fundamental machlekes that's going on here. A basic question of whether you can apply berera or not. Even if it's externally imposed. The isser of my entry into your chatzar was imposed by the other party, and likewise the other party was distanced by this party. So even in that case, although there's no room for knas, I did nothing wrong. He made it asr on me. He did nothing wrong. I made it asr on him. Still, none of them enter the chatzar because inevitably you're using the other person's property. We don't say breira. So which way do we learn the Mishnah? Is it a breira question or a knas question? Tashmai comes a raya. In the second case of the Mishnah, it wasn't a two-way neder, it was a one-way neder. So Reuven was mudar, meaning a neder was applied to him to limit him, to restrict him from his friend's property. Right, that's the case. Rabbanan still disagree with Rabbi Eliezer. They say you can't, Reuven cannot enter the chatzar. What's the case here? Mudar. Mudar typically means it's lashon pual. He's on the receiving end of the other person's neder. It was externally imposed. He's not at fault, his friend is. And still, Chachamim don't allow him to step foot. Evidently, it has nothing to do with penalties or knases. Answers the Gemara, no, don't bring a raya. Tani nadar mechavera no. Let's revise the lashon. Instead of mudar, which sounds like he's on the receiving end of the other person's neder, read it as nadar mechavera no, which can mean that Reuven himself applied and imposed a neder on his own self. I will not benefit from your property. Oh, self-imposed, perhaps, justifies a knas. In fact, it seems that this version is more probable. We're speaking that Reuven self-imposed a neder, diktani seifa. Because look at the second aspect of that second case. We tell Reuven, look, you can't carry on like this. Inevitably, you're going to end up using the other person's property. Right? Like we explained in the Mishnah, because he's using your property, you're going to be jealous. You're going to go over and use his property. You have to get out of the partnership. Now, this makes very much sense. The nadar who? If we're speaking that in fact Reuven, imposed his own neder on himself. So you trigger the issue, you made the trouble, and you're at fault. That explains this halacha of kaifin, who can force Reuven to sell out. Who asked you to do this? Eli Amrist Adri, but if somebody else put the neder on him, it wasn't self-imposed. Shimon was the one who distanced Reuven from Shimon's property. Amai kaifin, I say, why would you go ahead and force Reuven to sell his property? Hameinas anis, it's a pure einus. He's totally faultless. So indeed, it would seem from the halacha in the Mishnah, we're speaking about such a case where it was self-imposed rather than externally imposed. So what's the bottom line here? We had a shaila. partners are usher on each other, Rabbanan say don't enter the chatzar at all. Is it because you never know, you might be walking the other person's property, it's owned by both, using the other person's chatzar? Is that the reason? Or Breira would not be an issue. You could verify, you can choose, this is mine, this is yours. The reason for the Isser is a knas. And if it's knas, it would apply specifically in a self-imposed Isser. But if it was externally imposed, it's an oines, you wouldn't have any reason to make a knas. But if it's a Breira issue, then it would apply in all cases. So we tried to bring a raya, we haven't really concluded. But as we explained, the Ran brings the Gemara Bava Kama that in fact, the Gemara there, it's Ravina, there he learns that in fact the machlokas between Rabbi Lezer and Yaakov and the Rabbanan revolves around the question of whether or not we apply Breira in a Chatzar Shutr. And it applies in all cases, whether the neder was self-imposed or imposed by the other partner, it doesn't matter. After all, it's Asr, and the question is, could you go ahead and pick and choose, well, this is mine now, this is yours? Rabbi Lezer says yes, Chachamim say no. Now, what type of chatzar are we speaking about? How big is the chatzar? There are two general categories when we speak about jointly owned properties. If it's large enough to accommodate both people comfortably, meaning if you should divide the property, there would be enough to go around. For instance, by a chatzar, you would have 4x4 ames per party. That's called yesh boy kedei chalukah. There's enough there to allow for a proper division. In which case, each party can compel the other party to divide, to split. That's yesh boy kedei chalukah, and that's an option. If it doesn't work out, they split. When it's too small for that, it's ein boy kedei chalukah. There's not enough to go around for two people. Then they're stuck with each other. This partnership arrangement is basically perpetual. They can't force each other out. So when we speak about a shutfin shenadru, hanaza mizeh, asurun nekanos l'chatzar, what type of chatzar are we speaking about? Amar Rabba, he quotes Ziri, Amar Ziri, machlekas, sheyesh bo kedei chalukah. This machlekas, meaning when the Rabbanon say, Reuven and Shimon are both disallowed from the chatzar. You know why? Because, in contrast to Rabbi Lezer ben Azari, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, who says, Yesh Bereira. I'm walking on my property. After all, this is what we made up when we purchased the chatzar. Right? As you explained before, this whole arrangement was already established. It's etched in stone. It's in the contract. It's enmeshed in the fabric of our ownership here. Joint ownership means joint financial hold and joint usage. What does joint usage mean? When I use it, it's mine. When you use it, it's yours. Right? So it's all in there from day one. It's just a question of timing, of scheduling. That's yet to be defined and determined. At what point and moment am I going to use it? In which case, it will be considered mine at that point. Or at which point in time will you be using it? In which case, it was meant for you. It was meant for you and your use for that moment. So that explains Rabbi Lezer ben Azari. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Rabbanan, although they disagree, but according to Rabbah, in the name of Zeiri, they don't disagree fundamentally. In concept, they agree. It makes sense. There's not much that needs to be verified. It's all there from day one. It was meant for my use, when I decide to use. It was meant for your use, when you decide to use it. That's a perfectly fair arrangement. I'm not interfering with your part, you're not interfering with mine. When I use it, it's mine. When you use it, it's yours. But if it's yesh bo kedei chalukah, it's big enough that it accommodates a division. So down the road, you never know how long this partnership will hold. There's a very real possibility that we will buy each other out. We will force each other to separate, right? So being as such, the Rabbanon say, it was never really so clear and absolute that this arrangement will continue perpetually. That this will be a continuous joint arrangement. Maybe they'll split along the road. And therefore, you can't say it's all established, it's clear. It's already been packaged at the time of a purchase, that we're going to use it separately, and each one will use it on his day and it'll be considered his on that day. It's not clear at all that arrangement will even hold up. Maybe they'll sell off, maybe they'll split. So here, it's like a regular brera. It's no different than a regular brera. It's sort of a pending situation, awaiting confirmation, awaiting verification. And we don't say brera by deraisa. So if it's ein b'kedei chalukah, if it's a small size property, not enough to go around, we know there won't be any splitting going on here. They're going to be staying like this forever. It's going to be a perpetual, ongoing, continuous joint usage arrangement. And all those details, all those zechusim, all those rights and claims have been enshrined at the time of purchase. This is the way we're going to own it. This is the way we're going to use it. It's all set in stone. Timing, scheduling, okay, we're going to figure that out. So there's not much to be verified, not much to be confirmed down the road. It's all there right now. It's already huvrar right now. It's clear right now what we're going to do with this thing. And therefore, even the Rabban would agree. This is not your typical brera. Brera means, you start a process and you just leave it hanging up in the air, waiting, awaiting confirmation, awaiting verification, awaiting further detail. Here it's all the details have been worked out. I'm going to use it when I choose to use it. You're going to use it when you choose to use it. It's mine as per my use. It's yours as per your use. When am I going to? That will figure out timing and schedule. We'll still have to work that out. That's a very minor detail. But that only applies when it's ein b'kedei chalukah, and they're going to be sitting with this field together forever. But if it's yesh b'kedei chalukah, where there's a very real possibility that they will split, so it's not really so known, it's not guaranteed, it's not absolute that this arrangement will continue throughout. So anything that happens down the road is sort of a confirmation. It's like brera. Oh, it's actually happening this way. Oh, I'm actually actualizing my schus. So their bailus, their ownership, is sort of undefined until they actually decide to use it in their respective manners. So that's brera. Machlokes sheish b'kedei chalukah. When it's big enough for chalukah is a real option. So it's a pending ownership, which resorts to the classic conventional brera, which doesn't work by deraisa, and therefore you can't just decide, okay, I'm walking into mine, you're walking into yours. Aval ein b'kedei chalukah. But if it's small enough, in which case we know chalukah is not a real option. So the joint ownership and the zechusim that come along with it has been totally clarified at the point of purchase. And that agreement, that arrangement will continue continuously. Divrei Kol Mutar all agree, even the Rabbanan agree. Down the road, Reuben could just walk into his part, Shimon to his part. This was meant for me, this was meant for you. It's been worked out way back when we purchased it. We don't really need the classical brera here. And therefore it's mutar. Amar Rav Yosef. What do you mean? Harei beis haknesses. The Mishnah later speaks about, a fellow who can't have enough from his friend and they want to use the shul. The Kamisha ein b'kedei chalukah dami. Shul is not something which is split amongst the community members. It's a jointly held institution. So this arrangement will just continue perpetually. And the Mishnah clearly says that they cannot use the community's institutions because they're interfering with each other's rights. What do you mean? It's ein b'kedei chalukah. This situation will continue perpetually. So when they built a shul, or they purchased a shul, there's an implied agreement there that it's mine for my day of use, it's yours when you use it, and that's it. Why can't we say brera? Elam Rav Yosef is going to be machmer. He quotes Zeiri a bit differently than Rabba. Zeiri, machlekes she'ema k'dei chalukah. Oh. He's machmer. He says when it's ema k'dei chalukah, and you know there's not going to be much splitting going on. They're going to be continuing this with this arrangement for all time. It's dafke here that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says it's okay because at that point of purchase, it's been established, it's been incorporated into the fabric of their arrangement. That it's meant, it's destined for his use on his days, for his use on his days. And you don't need Brera. It's been verified now that it's meant for you and it's meant for you when each one of you chooses to use it. Because it's Eimba Kedei Chalukah, we know. And most likely, this arrangement will just keep on going. Aval Yesh Bo Kedei Chalukah, but if it's big enough, large enough, which allows for a proper division, in which case dividing this property is a real option. In which case, this initial arrangement isn't necessarily going to hold water. It's sort of pending further developments. In this case, all agree. Mudarim Hano cannot use the joint chatzar because since their arrangement, their agreement, their ownership is sort of undefined, unconfirmed, it's pending further developments. So to get up today and say, well, I'm strolling through my chatzar because now I'm deciding that it's mine because I'm using it. I want it to be verified now. I want it to be nizbar. This was meant for me all along. That's brera. You're activating brera. You're trying to choose and verify now which one was meant for you. All agree it's asr. Because, according to Rav Yosef, if it's yesh bo kedei chalukah, you can't say the arrangement was already done, was completed at the point of purchase. It's a pending situation. It's an unknown, precarious type of estate that we're dealing with. In which case, you have to apply brera down the road to say, well, this was meant for me, this was meant for you. And we don't say brera by deirais. Amar Rav Huna, like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. In terms of the halacha and the Mishnah, we go like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We can apply, brera, at least in some situations, depending on Rabbah or Rav Yosef. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Okay, in the next case we have a mudar menam chaveroi. So I can't have enough from you. V'yesh l'shamechatz, and he owns a bathhouse, and it happens to be rented out. So the halacha is, if you have a tfisas yad and it's still yours, then I can't have it. V'kama tfisas yad, what's considered a personal stake, personal interest, a personal hold on that facility. Amar Rav Nachman lemechza l'shlish l'rviyah. So he leased it. It wasn't, like a flat-out rental arrangement. It was like a lease, where the owner gets, half of the profits, a third, a quarter. In which case, he's actually he has an interest in the actual, the actual operation of this facility. So it still relates to him, identifies with the owner, and I can't interact with that facility. Aval be'batzer labor, if it's less than a quarter, then that's not significant enough to be considered a personal stake. The Ran is gers aval be'beitzim mutter. He says it was a derech that the Baal HaMerchas, the owner, would bring his farm produce, his eggs, and sell it to the mikveh goers. So that right, if he retains that right, that's not considered a personal stake in the facility itself. Abaye Amar, afilu bebeitzim asr, even the egg selling rights is still considered a personal stake. It's still in his hands, and therefore I can't use that facility because the owner is still there. What's an example of a total disengagement? The makabel betasko, and the owner is simply taking a flat rental fee, in which case he's totally disengaged, and then I can interact with that facility because it's now in the hands of the renter and no longer identifies with its owner. So we learned about the shutfen who own a chatzar. We have three cases. They're mudar hana zemizeh, or they're only mudar mechaveroi, or there's somebody outside who's mudar from one of these partners. In all three cases, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, no problem, walk in there, bereira. According to Rabbanan, it would be asr. The Gemara wasn't sure whether it's a bereira issue, whether it's a knas issue. In any case, Rabba learns that when it's a small enough place that they're not going to split it, Ein Bo Kedei Chalukah, all agree. This arrangement, this Brera arrangement, has been incorporated into the fabric of their agreement. It's a done deal, it's a confirmed arrangement, in which case, even the Rabbanan would agree it's permissible for the partners to walk in there because this was meant for me, this was meant for you. We're totally disengaged. According to Rav Yosef, he's machmer, he goes the other way. The machlekes is only by Ein Bo Kedei Chalukah. Over there, B'lez Ben Yaakov is matter. But if it's Yesh Bo Kedei Chalukah, all agree that it's us. We learned about the fellow who made an neder from interacting with his friend, and he owns a merchatz or some other facility in town. If he totally rented it out without any personal hold on the facility, then I could go ahead and use that facility. It relates to the current renter, and therefore it's mutter to me. May Hashem give us much siyata d'shmaya and hatzlacha rabbah.